Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever felt like there are these, I don't know, invisible forces kind of steering things in your life, especially around really fundamental stuff?
Hmm, absolutely. That feeling of being pulled by something you can't quite put your finger on.
Yeah. Like maybe with money, you're always anxious about it. Doesn't matter how much you actually have.
Hmm.
Or maybe you spend like crazy, or you just avoid looking at your bank balance entirely.
Right, those money patterns can be really strong.
Or what about relationships,
Hmm.
intimacy, connection? Maybe you find yourself in the same painful loops again and again, struggling to feel really seen or safe. Or maybe using intimacy in ways that honestly just leave you feeling kind of empty.
Yeah, or disconnected. It's another huge area where these hidden drivers show up.
And then there's food. Something so basic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you use it for comfort when you're stressed out or feel guilty after eating, or you're just constantly thinking about what and when you're going to eat next.
That preoccupation, yeah.
It's that feeling, that nagging thought, why do I keep doing this? This isn't working for me.
It's incredibly common, that sense of being stuck in automatic patterns, especially in these core areas, security, connection, just basic well-being.
Exactly. And that feeling, that sense of something deeper driving the bus, that's precisely where the material we're delving into today starts. We got this source, this really deep dive into how our earliest experiences, like the subconscious programming from childhood, basically creates the blueprint for these patterns,
Right.
specifically focusing on how we relate to money, to sex and intimacy, and to food.
And what's really compelling, I think, about this source is how it draws that direct line. It's not just saying, oh, you have these habits. It's suggesting they're often echoes of really deep beliefs and feelings about ourselves, about the world, that got locked in when we were super young, way before we could really reason things out like adults.
Totally. And this source, it talks about money, sex, and food as the three energies of human mastery. That's the term it uses.
Interesting term.
Yeah, and it makes this really powerful point that for a lot of us, the way we chase after these things isn't coming from a place of like conscious choice or feeling secure inside. It's actually driven by fear or old wounds or this unconscious attempt to fill some kind of void from way back when.
Yes, that's a core idea. The need for security, which gets tied to money, right? The need for connection tied to sex and intimacy, the need for comfort, often linked to food. These basic needs get kind of twisted when our fundamental sense of self-worth or safety is shaky.
So we end up looking outside for something we feel is missing inside.
Exactly. We're chasing it externally.
Okay, so our mission here in this deep dive is to really unpack the key insights from this source. First, how does this early programming actually happen? Like what's going on in those first few years that sets these deep patterns?
Right, the mechanics of it.
Second, why these three things, specifically money, sex, food, why are they such significant mirrors for what's going on inside us, for our unhealed stuff?
Yeah, why are they the big three, so to speak?
And crucially, what steps does this source suggest we can actually take to heal those old imprints, to understand the roots and shift from just reacting based on old programming to, consciously creating our lives from a place of being more whole?
And it's important to stress this isn't about blame, is it? The source isn't pointing fingers at parents or yourself.
No, not at all. It's presented more as a way to gain a deeper, maybe more compassionate understanding of your own inner world.
Right. Recognizing the roots lets you reclaim the power to choose differently now, using these insights like a map.
It's like realizing your struggles might not be about willpower, but about old software running in the background. And the good news is software can be updated.
That's a great analogy.
So let's jump right in. The core idea. Childhood programming is the foundation for our adult lives. This source doesn't ease into it, does it? It basically says our earliest experiences don't just influence us, they pretty much lay the foundation for our whole adult operating system.
It's a bold claim, yeah. That the core beliefs, the emotional patterns we live by as adults, are largely set incredibly early.
And it mentions a specific window, right? Like by age 7?
That's the figure it gives. By age 7, something like 95% of our core subconscious programs are downloaded, installed, basically.
Wow, 7. That feels really young.
Yeah.
That's before complex social stuff in school, before you even really know who you are independently.
Mm.
What makes that age range so critical, according to the source?
Well, think about brain development. In those early years, birth to around 7, a child's brain is operating largely in these very receptive, non-analytical states, like theta waves. They're like little sponges, but more than sponges. They're constantly forming hypotheses about how the world works and their place in it.
Okay.
They absorb everything what they see, hear, but most importantly, the source stresses what they feel directly from their environment. There's no adult filter, no critical thinking going, does that really apply to me? It just goes in.
Like installing the operating system before the firewall's up.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to put it. What gets installed then becomes the default setting.
So they take everything personally almost.
Largely, yes. Their logic is simple and egocentric. If something happens, especially repeatedly, they internalize it as a fundamental truth about them or about life. They can't yet understand complex adult motivations or stresses.
And the source points to specific types of beliefs getting wired in then. What are they?
It focuses on 3 really core areas. Your sense of self-worth. Am I lovable? Am I basically okay? Am I enough?
Okay.
Your capacity for love, both giving and receiving. Is love safe? Does it come with strings attached? Is it conditional? And then fundamental feelings of safety and trust. Is the world generally a safe place? Am I safe to just be myself, express what I feel? These become the deep assumptions running underneath everything else.
Now, this is really important. The source makes a distinction. It's not just about capital T's trauma, right? Not just abuse or neglect or big disasters.
Absolutely crucial point. While those things obviously leave deep marks, the source argues that subtle, everyday emotional imprints can be just as powerful in shaping these core beliefs.
Subtle emotional imprints. What does that actually mean? Give us a feel for that.
This is where it becomes really relevant for almost everyone, I think. Even if you had a good childhood, think about the consistent emotional atmosphere in the home, the nonverbal cues, how a child's normal needs for attention, comfort, expression were met, or maybe consistently not met.
So like a parent who's always stressed or anxious, or maybe just emotionally distant, even if they weren't mean.
Exactly. Or maybe highly critical, even if they thought they were helping. It's not about malicious intent. It's about the child's experience.
Because the child can't understand the adult's reasons.
No, they make it about them. If a parent is consistently withdrawn, the kid doesn't think, oh, mom's depressed. They think, based on their simple logic, what's wrong with me that mom doesn't want to engage? Or maybe I'm too much.
Wow. So what kind of beliefs might form from that, according to the source?
Well, the source gives some powerful examples of this subconscious logic. If your bids for attention or comfort were often ignored or met with impatience, you might internalize, I'm not worthy of attention, or my needs don't matter, leading to that core I'm not enough belief.
Okay.
If love or praise mostly came when you achieve something, good grades, being quiet, being good, you might learn, love is conditional, I have to earn it. That wires in the I have to achieve to be loved or I must be perfect program.
And what if expressing emotions wasn't okay, like crying or being angry?
Right. If expressing normal kid emotions led to the parent getting angry, overwhelmed, or just shutting down, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, or just that cold withdrawal, the child learns, my feelings are bad, or my feelings make people leave. This leads to programs like, my emotions aren't safe, or it's not safe to be the real me.
And this connects to the source's biggest point about what gets programmed, doesn't it? It's less about the words and more about the feeling.
Absolutely spot on. The emotional experience is the primary language the subconscious understands in those early years. The feeling is what gets imprinted way deeper than the words.
Can you give that example the source used about the crying child?
Yeah, it's a really poignant one. A child is crying, reaching out, needing comfort, but isn't held or soothed. The feeling internalized isn't just sadness. It's this profound sense of aloneness, that their distress doesn't matter. The source says this imprints the feeling, my emotions aren't safe because expressing them didn't bring comfort, and I am alone.
And the source says that overwhelming feeling gets buried.
It does. It's too much for the young nervous system to handle. So survival kicks in. Suppression is a key strategy. Push the feeling down, out of awareness. The body might tense up to contain it. But, and this is critical, the source emphasizes that buried energy doesn't disappear. It stays stored subconsciously in the body, always kind of seeking resolution or expression.
And that's where the adult patterns come in.
That's the direct link the source makes. Those adult struggles with money, sex, food, they are often the buried feelings and beliefs trying to get attention or resolution.
So how do those specific beliefs, I'm not worthy, I have to earn love, my emotions aren't safe, I'm alone, actually translate into, say, overworking or people-pleasing or issues with food?
The source explains these adult behaviors as basically coping mechanisms that have outlived their usefulness, or maybe misguided attempts by the adult you to finally get the love, safety, or sense of worth that felt missing back then. Or sometimes just ways to keep numbing the old pain.
Okay, give me an example. Overworking.
Right. If the core belief is I have to earn my worth or I'm not enough, that can directly fuel constantly working, needing to achieve, chasing money or status. You're trying to prove your value externally because you don't feel it internally.
And people-pleasing must tie into the not save being myself idea.
Exactly. If you learned early on that your authentic self or needs weren't acceptable or that you had to be a certain way to get love, then as an adult you might automatically slip into people-pleasing. Always saying yes, suppressing your own needs, trying to gain approval and avoid conflict because deep down that old program says, who I really am isn't okay.
And how do money, sex, or food fit in as numbing tools or ways to seek validation?
Yeah, this is direct. If the core feeling is my emotions aren't safe or I feel alone and overwhelmed, food can become the easiest, quickest way to soothe that. It's temporary comfort, a way to numb out when you haven't learned other ways to handle the feeling itself. The binge eating or restricting isn't really about food. It's about managing that internal state.
And money or sex as ways to feel powerful or loved.
Yes. If there's a deep internal sense of insecurity or unworthiness, chasing money can feel like chasing power or security. It's using the external symbol to try and counter the internal feeling of vulnerability. Similarly, the source suggests if you feel unlovable deep down, seeking lots of sexual validation or intense relationships might be less about true connection and more about getting that temporary external hit of feeling desired, trying to fill that internal void.
Wow. So, according to this source, these aren't just random adult issues. They're like the grown-up versions of a child's survival strategies.
Precisely. Strategies that were necessary then, maybe, but now they're running automatically and often causing problems. They're reactive patterns based on outdated software.
Okay, that sets the stage really clearly. The roots are in this early programming. Now let's dig into why the source zooms in on money, sex, and food. Why these three? What makes them such powerful reflections of our inner world?
That's a great question. It's not random. The source argues these three represent really primal human drives and needs. They're deeply connected to survival, security, pleasure, connection. Because they're so fundamental, how we relate to them becomes a very clear, almost unavoidable mirror of our deepest programming and our emotional state.
Can you break that down? How does survival, security, pleasure, connection map onto money, sex, food specifically?
Sure. Money, obviously, in our world is tied to basic survival, shelter, food, safety. It gives us a sense of control, stability. So our relationship with money often directly reflects our beliefs about scarcity versus abundance, our feelings of safety, and even our sense of deservingness.
Okay, money is security and survival. What about sex?
Sex and intimacy tap into those core needs for connection, love, pleasure, belonging, even procreation, biologically. So how we approach sex often reveals our programming around vulnerability, trust, self-worth, our ability to truly connect emotionally. Are we seeking genuine intimacy, or is it more about validation, power, or escape?
Makes sense. And food.
Food is the most basic survival need, nourishment. But it's layered with emotion, isn't it? From infancy, food often equals comfort, survival, connection with the caregiver. So our patterns around food comfort, eating, restricting, obsessing can reflect how we self-soothe, our feelings about control, pleasure, nourishment, and how we cope with difficult emotions.
So because they touch these really core, almost animalistic parts of being human, they become the stage where our hidden programming plays out most dramatically.
Exactly. And the source makes this crucial distinction, the difference between relating to these energies from that place of wounding and lack driven by the old programming versus relating to them from a place of internal wholeness and self-worth.
Okay, let's focus on that first one. If you're operating from wounding or lack, how does that show up? What does the source say?
It says when you don't feel safe or whole inside because of those old imprints, you don't approach money, sex, or food consciously and healthily. You're driven to seek them out primarily to fill that internal void or soothe the pain of those buried feelings. It's an external quest to fix an internal issue.
Can you give us those specific examples again through this lens? Money first.
Right. If you feel powerless or not enough inside, you might chase money relentlessly. But it's not really about financial freedom. It's about chasing the feeling of power or significance that money seems to offer, hoping it'll quiet that inner voice of inadequacy. The source calls it chasing money to feel powerful because you feel powerless inside.
Okay. And sex from that place of wounding.
If the old programming left you feeling unlovable or desperate for validation, you might seek frequent sexual encounters or specific relationship dynamics. But it's not about authentic connection. It's about getting that temporary external hit of feeling wanted, desired. You're, as the source puts it, seeking sex to feel loved or validated because you feel unlovable or insecure internally. It's trying to patch up self-worth from the outside.
And food as the soother.
Often tied back to that "my emotions aren't safe" or "I'm alone" feeling. Difficult feelings come up: stress, sadness, loneliness. And if you don't have internal tools to process them, food becomes the go-to coping mechanism. It numbs the pain, provides temporary comfort. It's self-medicating feelings you believe you can't handle.
It's so important what the source says here, though. Money, sex, food themselves aren't the problem.
Absolutely critical point. The source shifts the focus entirely. It's not about the thing. It's about the intention and the emotion driving your relationship to the thing. Are you coming from lack, fear, trying to fix a wound? Or are you coming from security, love, conscious choice? That's the whole difference.
And it highlights how seeking from lack is basically a trap, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It's presented as a classic feudal cycle. If you chase money because you feel not enough, no amount will ever make you feel enough. The internal feeling persists. You'll just need more or worry about losing it. If you seek sex to feel lovable, the external validation is fleeting. It doesn't heal the core feeling, so you constantly need more affirmation. You can't fill an internal emotional hole with external stuff, like trying to fill a leaky bucket.
So what's the alternative? What does the source say these energies look like when you approach them from wholeness, from love, from feeling secure inside?
Now that's where it paints a picture of real freedom. Money, approached from internal security, becomes a tool for stability, for contribution, for enjoying abundance, not a desperate measure to prove worth. Sex and intimacy, grounded in self-worth, become genuine expressions of connection, vulnerability, shared pleasure chosen consciously, not driven by neediness. And food, when healed, becomes about nourishment, pleasure, listening to your body free from guilt and compulsion.
Wow, that's a huge shift. It's like using these energies to enhance a life that already feels solid inside, rather than trying to use them to build that solid feeling.
Exactly. You're moving from desperately trying to get something you feel you lack to engaging with life from a place of already being whole, worthy, and safe. These things then add richness rather than being used as crutches.
Okay, maybe this is a good moment for anyone listening to just pause and reflect. Where do you notice yourself intensely seeking control or pleasure or safety through money, sex, or food? And based on what we've discussed from the source, what feeling might be underneath that? Fear of lack, feeling not good enough, difficulty with emotions. Just noticing that potential root is a huge first step.
That introspection is absolutely where the possibility for change really opens up.
So we get the roots in childhood, how those feelings get buried and pop up as patterns with money, sex, food. But the big question is, are we stuck? If this was said so early, is that just it? And the source says emphatically no. And this is where it introduces a really key shift in mindset.
Yes, this is the pivot. Moving from understanding the why to empowering the how. And the state that keeps us stuck, according to the source, is the victim mindset.
The victim mindset. We hear that term a lot. How does the source define it, specifically in relation to these childhood wounds?
It describes it as the perspective where your current struggles, your unhappiness, your patterns with money, sex, food are seen as primarily the fault of external things. What happened in the past, your parents, how people treated you, circumstances you feel are beyond your control. The defining phrase the source uses is, "I am the result of what happened to me. My present is dictated by my past."
So you're pointing outwards, blaming parents for the programming, blaming an ex for relationship fears, blaming your upbringing for money issues?
Exactly. And the critical consequence the source points out is you're essentially giving your power away. If your problems and your potential for change depend entirely on things outside of you changing what you can't control, then you're not in charge of your own life. Your well-being feels dependent on externals.
That makes sense. If the solution is out there, then you're powerless in here.
Precisely. Dependent. Your energy goes into complaining, blaming. But then the source offers what it calls the most powerful statement for healing. Healing starts the moment you shift perspective. From "I am the result of what happened to me" to "I am the creator of my experience."
I am the creator of my experience.
Wow.
That flips it completely, from being acted upon to being the actor.
It's a massive shift. And the source acknowledges this can feel really hard, even hard to swallow, especially if you're past genuinely involved pain or injustice, because it requires what the source calls radical responsibility.
Radical responsibility. Okay, that sounds like it could easily be twisted to blaming yourself for being hurt. Does the source clarify that?
Yes, very clearly. It stresses that radical responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for what happened to you as a child. You weren't responsible for your circumstances or adult actions then. The responsibility here is about owning your response now, owning your feelings, your reactions, your patterns, your choices in the present. It's saying, okay, that happened, I didn't choose it, but I do have the power to choose how I respond today and how I shape my life going forward.
So, not fault for the past, but power in the present.
Yes, it's owning your internal world now. And the source suggests there's huge power in that. When you own your pain, acknowledge it, feel it, accept it as your experience to navigate, instead of letting it define you or just blaming others for it, you actually gain the power to transform it. You stop waiting for an apology or for the past to magically change, and you start working with the energy within you. You acknowledge the past without letting it dictate your future.
That shift really puts the control back inside you, doesn't it?
Completely changes where your energy flows. Instead of being tied up in blame and powerlessness, your energy becomes available for understanding, healing, making conscious choices now. The source frames this as the absolute foundation for any real healing to take place.
Maybe take a second here if you're listening. Where might you recognize that victim mindset operating, maybe subtly? Where do you focus on what others did or didn't do, leaving you feeling stuck, maybe with finances, relationships? And where could you start stepping into that creator role, taking responsibility, not for the past event, but for your response and choices today?
Just noticing that tendency towards external blame is the first step in reclaiming that internal power the source talks about.
Now, making that shift, especially when the original hurt involved people close to us, like parents, that brings up a huge hurdle. How do you square the pain caused by others with taking responsibility for your own life now? And this leads right into the source's discussion on forgiveness.
Yes, forgiveness. This is often where people hit a major wall. The idea of forgiving someone who caused deep pain can feel like you're saying what they did was okay or letting them off the hook.
And the source is really clear. That is not what it means by forgiveness here.
Absolutely not. It's emphatic. Forgiving parents or anyone is not about condoning their actions, minimizing the hurt, or absolving them. The purpose of forgiveness in this context is entirely about your liberation. Self-liberation.
Self-liberation. How does the source define forgiveness then?
The core definition is incredibly simple but profound. I refuse to carry this pain anymore. It's presented as a conscious choice you make for yourself to let go of the burden, the anger, the resentment, the hurt, the blame that you've been carrying, maybe for decades. You release it not for them, but for you, for your own freedom.
So it's less about them and more about dropping the heavy weight you've been carrying.
Exactly. The source talks about energetic ties. Holding on to unforgiveness keeps you energetically linked to that person or event. Your emotional energy is bound to the past. You're still reacting to an old wound, constantly feeding it energy, revisiting the hurt.
Which goes right back to giving your power away, right?
Yeah.
If your energy's stuck in the past.
It's not available for your present. While you're energetically tied to that old wound, you're not fully present or powerful now. Forgiveness, in this view, is cutting those ties, reclaiming that bound-up energy so you can use it for healing, growth, creating the life you want now. It's like cutting the anchor ropes to the past.
Okay, the why is compelling. It's for your own freedom, but the how, that's the tricky part. The source says it's not just a mental, I forgive you. It's a process involving emotions and the body. What does that look like?
Yeah, this is key because just deciding mentally often doesn't work. The feeling remains. The source says the first absolutely essential step is allowing yourself to fully feel the emotions connected to the original wound.
Feel the anger, the sadness, the grief.
Yeah.
Not push it away or rationalize it.
Exactly. You have to let yourself feel it.
Right.
Trying to forgive while suppressing rage or deep sadness, the source says it's ineffective. The energy stays trapped. You need to create a safe internal space to really experience the feelings that the injury caused.
Okay, feel it first. Then what?
Then comes expression, often symbolic. The source suggests things like writing an uncensored letter you never send, pouring out everything, the anger, the accusations, the hurt. Or, as it vividly suggests, maybe you need to scream into a pillow. It's about releasing the stored energy, giving voice to the pain that might have been silent for years. An energetic discharge.
Feel it, express it, And then the choice.
Then, after moving through the feeling and expression, you reach a place where you can make the conscious choice to let go. But again, the source stresses this is a choice made not from the mind, but from the heart. What's the difference? A mental decision can feel forced, like you're trying to talk yourself into it while your gut is still churning. A heart-centered choice comes after the emotional processing. It feels like a genuine release, a felt sense of the burden lifting. It's deciding to stop carrying the pain because you deserve peace, not because they deserve forgiveness. It's a surrender.
That sounds intense. It requires real courage, but the way the Source lays it out, it also sounds like the only way to truly get free.
It's presented as maybe one of the toughest but most necessary steps to reclaiming your power, consciously choosing to break the past's hold on your present.
Maybe think about this. How might holding on to old hurts towards parents, partners, even yourself, be subtly influencing your patterns now? With money, intimacy, food. How might exploring this process, feeling, expressing, choosing release from the heart, actually free up energy in those areas where you feel stuck?
It's recognizing that the past only has power over us if we keep carrying its weight.
Okay, so we've covered the programming roots, how it shows up in money, sex, food, the shift from victim to creator, the power of forgiveness. But the Source adds another vital layer. Healing isn't just mental or emotional, it has to be somatic. It has to involve the body.
This is absolutely crucial, according to the Source. The insight is that trauma, stress, unexpressed emotion, they aren't just ideas in your head. They get stored physically. In your nervous system, your breath, muscle tension, posture, even your gut health.
The body remembers.
Yeah.
That phrase really hits home. How does the Source explain the body remembering these early wounds?
It explains that our body's prime directive is survival. Back in childhood, when things felt unsafe or overwhelming, the body developed defense mechanisms, not just psychological ones, but physiological ones. If expressing yourself felt dangerous, maybe your nervous system learned to shut down feelings, or you learned to hold your breath. If there was constant conflict, maybe your muscles learned to stay braced for impact. These became conditioned physical patterns.
So it's literal. The body is still holding that tension, that shallow breath, that bracing posture from way back then.
Often, yes. The body adopted these states to cope. And the Source points out these patterns often persist into adulthood, long after the original danger is gone. Under present-day stress, even minor stress, the nervous system can default right back to those old embodied defenses. You might find yourself with chronic shoulder tension, jaw clenching, digestive issues flaring up emotionally. It's the body running old protective software.
That makes it so clear why just talking about it isn't always enough if the pattern is in the body.
The body has to be part of the healing. That's the core message. Because the imprints are held physically, healing must be somatic. You can understand your story intellectually. You can even decide to forgive mentally. But if the stored energy and defensive patterns in the body aren't addressed, the old programs keep running. This is why people feel stuck sometimes. Even after lots of therapy, they understand the story, but the energy is still locked in the body.
So what kind of somatic approaches does the Source suggest? How do we actually help the body release this stored energy and feel safe?
It highlights a few key pathways. One is conscious movement. Things like exercise, stretching, dance, even just shaking, literally shaking your limbs can help discharge trapped energy, complete those fight or flight responses stuck in the muscles. It helps the body move out of freeze states.
Like literally shaking off the stress.
Kind of, yeah. Animals do it naturally after stress. We often suppress it. So conscious movement helps facilitate that release. Another huge one is breath work. We mentioned restricted breathing as a defense. Learning to breathe deeply, fully, consciously is incredibly powerful for regulating the nervous system. Deep belly breathing signals safety to the brain, releases tension, calms that fight or flight.
And the third, somatic practice.
This is really key. The practice of feeling emotions as physical sensations in the body, without judgment. When an old pattern gets triggered and you feel anxiety or anger bubble up, instead of getting lost in the story or reacting, you bring your awareness to the body. Where do you feel it? Tight chest, knot in stomach. You just notice the physical sensation, breathe with it, trust that it's energy wanting to move through you.
Which is the exact opposite of burying it, like the child had to do.
Precisely. You're creating the internal safety now that wasn't there then. You're training your nervous system that it's safe to feel. By allowing the sensation to be felt, its intensity usually lessens naturally. And the Source says integrating these somatic practices with the psychological understanding leads to much deeper healing, mind, emotion, and body.
It's fascinating how much our bodies carry. Maybe just take a moment now, listening, to tune into your own body. Where do you hold tension? Notice your breath. How might paying attention to these physical signals, as the source suggests, maybe allowing a sigh or just noticing where an emotion sits physically, be a new way to navigate tough feelings?
The body's always talking. Learning its language is a vital part of this.
Okay, we have covered so much ground in this deep dive. We looked at how early childhood programming creates those subconscious beliefs about worth and safety, how subtle imprints get buried and become roots for adult patterns.
We saw how these inner states get reflected in our relationship with money, sex, and food, the three energies, and how trying to fix internal voids externally just keeps us stuck.
We explored that crucial shift from victim mindset being defined by the past to creator mindset, taking radical responsibility for our present experience.
And we touched on key practices like forgiveness not for them, but for our own liberation, cutting those energetic ties to past pain.
And crucially, we recognized healing has to be somatic. The body holds the trauma, so we need practices like movement, breath work, feeling emotions physically to release that stored energy.
It's a really comprehensive map for understanding those invisible drivers, isn't it?
It really is. And it might feel like a lot, maybe even overwhelming, but the source doesn't just leave us with a theory. It gives practical steps, an invitation to actually start shifting this old energy. Not overnight, but as a practice.
Yes. Actionable steps anyone can start with. Consistency is key.
So what's step one, according to the source?
Step one, the absolute foundation, is awareness. You can't change what you're not aware of. It sounds basic, but it means really starting to observe yourself without judgment.
How do you practice that with these patterns?
It's about catching the pattern in the act or right after, noticing the urge to stress shop online, realizing you just use sex to avoid feeling lonely again, catching yourself reaching for the cookies the second you feel stressed, just asking, there I go, what am I doing? Shining a light on the automatic program.
Okay, awareness, spot the pattern. Step two.
Step two is pause. And in that pause, get curious. When you catch it, just stop. Don't react, don't judge, breathe. And ask yourself the key question the source suggests. What am I really feeling underneath this? Look for the emotion driving the behavior.
So you notice the stress spending urge. You pause. You ask, what am I really feeling? Maybe it's anxiety or inadequacy or just boredom.
Exactly. The spending isn't the point. It's the feeling you're trying to escape or soothe. The compulsive eating isn't hunger. It's the sadness or anger you don't know how to handle. This step connects the behavior back to the buried emotion.
And step three ties right into the somatic piece.
Yes. Step three is breathe. Feel it. Let it pass through. Once you identify the feeling, allow it to be present in your body. Use your breath as an anchor and just feel the physical sensations. Tightness, heat, vibration, whatever it is. Let the energy of the emotion move through you without resisting it or acting out the old pattern. Create that safe internal space for it.
This is creating the safety that the child didn't have.
Precisely. You're teaching your nervous system it's safe to feel this now. As you allow it, the intensity often naturally fades. And then, having moved through the feeling, you get to step 4. Choose again. Come back to love.
This is where you step into being the creator.
Absolutely. Once the intensity of the emotion has moved through, you're not totally hijacked by the automatic pattern anymore. You've created a space, a choice point. The source suggests asking, what would a loving, healed version of me do here? This guides your response from conscious creation, self-care, wisdom, rather than the old fear-based program.
So after feeling the anxiety behind the urge to spend, maybe the choose again is call a friend, go for a walk, do something genuinely soothing.
Exactly. A choice aligned with self-love, not the old pattern that brought temporary relief but kept you stuck. And the source is really gentle here, saying the goal isn't perfection, it's presence.
Not perfection, presence. That takes the pressure off. It's not about never having the urge again.
Right. It's about building the capacity to be present when it arises. To notice, pause, feel, and then choose consciously more often. Each time you do, you weaken the old pathway and strengthen the new one. You strengthen your role as creator.
And the source ends with that hopeful message.
Yeah.
You're not broken.
Yes. It's not about fixing flaws. It's about realizing you're carrying old energy programs, emotions that can be released. It's a compassionate process of uncovering the whole self that's already there.
So thinking about those areas, money, relationships, food where you see old patterns, maybe just pick one small instance this week where you could try these 4 steps.
Yeah.
Awareness, pause and curiosity, breathe and feel, choose again from love. Even once, can start to shift things.
That single conscious breath, that single different choice can be the start of a whole new path.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive, really guided by this source's insights. We started with understanding how early childhood programming lays down those subconscious beliefs about worth and safety, how even subtle stuff gets buried and fuels adult patterns.
We saw how our relationship with money, sex, and food acts like a mirror for those inner states, and why chasing external fixes for internal voids just doesn't work.
We talked about that vital shift from feeling like a victim of the past to
Mhm.
stepping into being the creator of our present through radical responsibility.
And we looked at key tools like forgiveness, releasing ourselves from old pain, and the absolute necessity of somatic healing, involving the body to release stored trauma energy.
Through things like movement, breath, and feeling our emotions physically.
And finally, those 4 practical steps anyone can start using: awareness, pausing curiosity, breathe and feel, and choose again from love.
I think the core message weaving through all of this from the source is really hopeful. It's that by going inward, by understanding and healing the roots, those old wounds and feelings, the struggles we see on the outside, especially with money, sex, and food, can naturally start to change.
It offers a clear alternative to feeling stuck, a path towards living more consciously, guided by choice instead of old programming.
And here's a final thought for you to take away, building on these ideas. If your relationship with money, sex, or food really is just a mirror reflecting those earliest feelings about your own safety and worth, what possibilities might open up for you right now if you shifted your focus? Instead of trying to polish the mirror or change the reflection, what if you poured your energy directly into nurturing those feelings of safety and worth within yourself? What might abundance, connection, or nourishment truly mean and feel like to the version of you who feels fundamentally safe and inherently worthy? How could tending to that inner state reshape your outer world in ways you haven't even considered yet?